Gather close now, my friends, closer still. Let the fire burn low, and the night press in around us like a warm cloak. For I have a tale to spin that has never been told the same way twice, because this story is still growing, just like the girl inside it. It is a tale of an egg no bigger than a man's fist, of a bond that broke every rule the old dragons ever made, and of a girl who never asked to be chosen, but was chosen anyway. In the kingdom of Elderglen, far beyond the whispering pines and the silver rivers that never freeze, dragons were not friends to men. They were storms with wings, great scaled beasts that wheeled across the sky like thunderclouds, breathing fire that could turn a forest to ash in a single pass. No human had ever ridden one. No human had ever tamed one. The old scrolls in the king's library were very clear on this. Dragons choose their own kind, or they choose no one at all. And they most certainly did not choose a girl from a simple village who owned nothing but a patched wool dress and a pair of too big boots. Her name was Lila. She was 9 years old the day everything changed. It was early spring, the kind of morning when the world still smelled of last night's rain and the mud squelched between your toes like it was trying to tell you secrets. Lila's village, Willowmere, sat tucked in a green valley where the river bent like a sleepy cat. Her mother sold honey at the market. Her father had gone to the wars 3 winters earlier and never come home. So Lila helped with the bees and the goats and the endless chore of fetching water from the deep well beyond the barley fields. That morning, she was chasing a runaway kid goat that had slipped its tether. The little beast darted into the forbidden stretch of woods called the Black Hollow, where the trees grew so thick the sun forgot to visit, and the old folks swore the ground itself remembered ancient things. Lila hesitated only a moment. Then she plunged after it, heart thumping like a rabbit's. She never caught the goat. Instead, her foot caught on a root, and she tumbled headlong down a mossy bank into a hidden ravine no one had seen in 100 years. When she sat up, brushing leaves from her braids, she saw it. Half buried in the dark soil, glowing faint and warm like a coal that refuses to die, was an egg. Not a bird's egg, not a snake's egg. It was the color of midnight, struck through with veins of living gold. It was no bigger than a winter apple, and the moment Lila's trembling fingers brushed its shell, something happened that had never happened in all the long ages of Elderglen. The egg sang, not with sound you could hear with your ears alone. It sang inside her chest, a low, thrumming note that matched the beat of her heart exactly. The golden veins flared bright, and for one impossible second, Lila felt wings unfolding behind her own shoulder blades and fire licking gently at the edges of her thoughts. She should have run. She should have screamed for the village elders. Instead, she whispered, "Hello, little one." And the egg answered, not in words, but in a feeling of perfect, ancient trust. Lila wrapped it in her cloak and carried it home, hidden against her heart. She hid it beneath the loose floorboard under her bed, where the moonlight from the tiny window could still find it. Every night, she would lift the board and sit cross-legged, talking to it the way other children talked to dolls or imaginary friends. "I don't know what you are," she told it, "but I reckon we're friends now." Years passed. Lila turned 10, then 11. The egg never grew cold. It never cracked. It simply waited. But strange things began to happen to the girl who kept it. First, came the dreams. She would wake, gasping, certain she had just flown above the clouds on wings that were not her own. She could still feel the wind rushing between scales she did not have. She would stand at her window at dawn and know, without looking, which way the wild geese were flying that day. She could feel their wings inside her mind. The village thought her lucky. When the bees swarmed early and filled every hive twice over, they thanked Lila's good hand. When a flood came down the river and every house but hers stayed dry, they called it a miracle. When she outran the blacksmith's fastest son in the harvest races, even though he was 3 years older and twice her size, folks laughed and said the girl must have been born under a shooting star. Lila never told them about the egg. She didn't understand it herself. At 12, she discovered she could speak to animals. Not the way storybooks say, with perfect sentences, but with feelings. A frightened horse would calm the instant she laid her hand on its neck. The old one-eyed barn cat would bring her mice as gifts and curl in her lap, purring secrets. Once, when a wolf came too close to the village lambs, Lila walked straight toward it in the moonlight. She looked into its yellow eyes and thought, "Not tonight." The wolf lowered its head, turned, and vanished into the trees like smoke. The village elders began to watch her with uneasy eyes. "There is old magic in that girl," they muttered over their ale. "Magic that does not belong to men." Lila's mother worried in silence. She saw how her daughter sometimes stared at the horizon as though listening to something only she could hear. She saw how Lila's eyes flashed gold in firelight for just a heartbeat before going back to ordinary brown. Still the egg waited. 13. 14. The changes grew stronger. Lila found she could hold her hand in the hottest forge fire without blistering. The blacksmith dropped his tongs the first time he saw it. She could run for hours without tiring, leaping over fallen logs as though gravity had decided to be kind. And worst of all, or best of all, she began to have visions. Flashes. A sky full of dragons wheeling in war. A tiny dragon, no bigger than a hound, curled protectively around a sleeping girl. A voice like crackling flames whispering one word over and over. Bonded. She never knew what any of it meant. She only knew she was lonely in a way no one else could understand. 15. The year the trouble came. It started with rumors from the south. A warlord named Garrick Blackthorn had risen in the borderlands. He rode at the head of an army that carried dragon-slayer spears, tipped with black iron and enchanted to pierce even the thickest scales. His banner showed a broken dragon wing. He had sworn to rid the kingdom of every last dragon, so no one could ever challenge his rule. And his scouts had heard whispers of a girl in Willowmere who could do impossible things. They came at dusk on the first day of autumn. 50 riders in black mail, torches blazing, spears gleaming. They did not ask questions. They burned the barley fields first. Then they came for the village. Lila's mother screamed for her to hide, but Lila ran the other way, toward the old well beyond the fields where she had buried the egg years ago in a small iron box lined with her own baby blanket. She had moved it there the day she turned 14, afraid someone would find it under the floorboard. She reached the well just as 3 riders cut her off. The leader laughed behind his visor. "The witch girl," he snarled. "Blackthorn wants you alive, but he didn't say you had to be in one piece." He raised his spear. Lila backed against the stone well, heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs would crack. She could feel the egg beneath her feet, warm, pulsing, frantic now. The same golden song from years ago filled her chest again, only this time it was screaming. Danger, mine, protect. She had no weapon, only the small knife at her belt she used for cutting honeycomb. The spear came down, and the earth exploded. The iron box shattered upward in a fountain of dirt and golden light. The egg, still whole, shot into the air like a falling star in reverse. It hung for one impossible second between Lila and the spear. Then it cracked. Not slowly, not gently. It shattered with a sound like a mountain splitting. From the explosion of light and shell fragments burst a creature no bigger than a large hound. Scales the color of living embers, red gold shot through with midnight blue. Wings too small to lift even its own body yet. Eyes like twin furnaces. Tiny horns just beginning to curl. The little dragon landed between Lila and the riders, tail lashing, teeth bared in a snarl far too big for its mouth. The lead rider laughed again until the dragon breathed. Not a wide gout of fire like the great dragons of legend. This was a thin, white-hot lance of pure plasma that struck the spear and melted it to slag in the man's hand before the laugh even left his throat. The rider screamed and fell backward off his horse. The other two charged. The tiny dragon moved faster than thought. It leapt. Claws that could slice steel raked across armor like it was paper. One rider was flung 20 feet into the air and crashed through a burning haystack. The second tried to wheel his horse away. Too late. The dragon's tail whipped out, wrapped around the horse's legs, and slammed both rider and mount to the ground so hard the earth shook. Then it turned to the rest of the warband, thundering toward them. Lila's voice came out small and shaking. "Wait!" But the dragon did not wait. It opened its jaws again and roared. The sound was not loud. It was deep, a note that vibrated in bones and made every horse in the warband rear in terror. Then the dragon inhaled once, deep, and exhaled something the world had never seen. A sphere of golden fire bloomed outward from its tiny body, rolling across the field like liquid sunlight. It did not burn the village. It did not touch Lila. But every black-armored rider it touched was lifted off the ground and thrown backward as though struck by a giant's fist. Spears melted. Horses fled screaming. Men who moments ago had been conquerors now ran like frightened children. In less than a minute, 50 riders became a memory. Silence fell over the burning fields. The little dragon turned. It was panting. One wing hung at a strange angle, hurt in the fight. A cut across its shoulder seeped golden blood that smoked where it touched the ground. But its eyes, those furnace eyes, were soft when they looked at Lila. It limped forward and pressed its forehead against her chest, right over her heart. And Lila understood everything at once. The dreams, the strength, the way animals trusted her, the fire that never burned her. All of it had been the dragon reaching through the shell, sharing its power with the only heart it had ever chosen. She dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around the tiny, trembling creature. "You waited for me," she whispered. The dragon made a sound, half purr, half sigh, and a single word bloomed in her mind like flame on dry tinder. Always. Its name came with the word, unasked and perfect. Ember. Ember the small. Ember the impossible. The dragon that had never been meant for any human, and yet had chosen the one girl whose heart beat in time with an ancient egg. The village came running then, her mother first, tears cutting tracks through the soot on her face. They stared at the tiny dragon curled in Lila's lap like a cat that had just saved the world. The elders fell to their knees, but Lila only smiled, tired and fierce, and 17 years old, and suddenly, impossibly, not alone. She stroked the soft scales between Ember's ears and whispered, "They said humans could never ride dragons." Ember lifted his head. His eyes sparkled with mischief and ancient power. In her mind, he answered, clear as bells, "Ride? Who needs to ride? I am small, but I am yours. And together we will burn every chain the world ever tried to put on us." The warlord, Garrick Blackthorn, would come again. The great dragons of the high peaks would hear of the impossible bond and fly down to see for themselves. Kings and mages and hunters would hunt them both. But that is another tale for another night. Because right now, under a sky still lit by dying fires, a girl and a dragon, no bigger than a hound, sat together in the ashes of fear and began the first chapter of a legend that would outlive stars. Lila rested her cheek against Ember's warm head and closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, she was not wondering why strange powers moved through her. She knew. They had always been waiting inside an egg that had chosen a heart instead of a throne. And the world, oh my friends, the world was never going to be the same. So ends the first telling of the tale of Lila and Ember. But remember this as you carry it home tonight. Some bonds are written in the old scrolls, and some bonds are written in hearts that refuse to follow the rules. Which kind do you think matters more? The night is young yet. If you want the next chapter, when the great dragons came looking for the impossible one, when Ember grew just enough to be deadly in 1,000 clever ways, when Lila learned to fly without wings, only say the word. I will tell it. Because this story is still growing, and so are they.